Welcome to the SNI Podcast. With deep roots in the Canadian regulatory landscape, SNI has helped hundreds of companies get on the shelf quickly and compliantly so that they can sell more and grow their brands. On this show, you'll hear stories from SNI's clients, plus the team's insights on how to overcome their biggest compliance issues and create a standout brand in the food and natural wellness space. The SNI Podcast is your source for market compliance. Now, on to the episode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SNI Podcast. I'm joined today by SNI's Director of Business Development, Stuart Greenfield, and we're going to be speaking with Kathy Boyce, a marketing and trade specialist with Boyce Strategic Consulting. We want to talk about market research, government funding options, event management, and overall market entry strategy for companies crossing borders. Kathy, Stuart, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me today.
Kathy, you've worked alongside us at SNI for years now. You facilitate meetings with our clients, help customers get the information that they need. Can you tell us a bit about what you do when working with us to support clients?
Well, I'm the in-market representative for Food Export Northeast and Food Export Midwest, and they are two state regional trade groups that are funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And my role is really to help educate U.S. suppliers how to become export ready and introduce them to the trade and do market viability studies and that sort of thing. So, of course, that goes hand in hand with all the regulations that need to be done to be compliant in Canada. And so your office has been a wealth of information for me to be able to help educate these companies.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know that Stuart had met you years ago at a trade show, and we kind of just made that connection, and it's worked out great for both parties here.
Yeah, I think we've developed a really good working strategy and relationship over the last very many years that helps both our companies meet our requirements and help our clients primarily get into the market, which is, the prime directive for them.
And Kathy, can you tell us a bit about your history working as a consultant to support the USDA and their regional programs?
So Food Export offers a variety of programs to help educate U.S. companies. And so those that are indicate interest in the Canadian market, they would go through various programs that would be connected to me to help them. And so sometimes it's doing market viability studies called market scans and figuring out how their product would do in the market. How does it compete against other products? It includes information on their import regs, but it also includes what do they need to know to be export ready with Canadian packaging. And then so that's one aspect where we help them. We also have times where we have trade missions, which is when U.S. suppliers would come up for several days, and we would set up one-on-one meetings for the companies, but we always want to be able to educate the companies too. So we will incorporate taking them out to the retail environment, sees some store tours. We'll provide some pre-market research, and we'll have a market overview about the market. But then we've also always asked your company to come in and give a presentation about labeling so that they can be educated what needs to be done. We do a similar program at the CL show, and which flip-flops between Toronto and Montreal each year, and this year it'll be in Montreal. And those companies are coming in. We always check if they have any labeling issues or questions, and Source Nutraceutical has been very helpful in coming in and answering questions and sitting down and talking to the companies. So those are some of the main things that I do. We also do virtual consultations where a U.S. supplier may have very specific questions about the market, and often that is about labeling, and we'll do a half-hour conversation with them and answer those questions. We get requests all the time for companies saying, hey, we're ready to start doing that labeling. Can you supply names of companies that could help us out? And so, we've often referred to them with your company.
Right. Well, that's always, it's been a great source of referrals for sure. It's nice to know that, we have partners working out there to get people the information that they need, which often is, the labeling support as well.
And what's really nice is the companies that we get introduced to by Kathy and through her activities are companies that are actively engaged in the Canadian market. They're not so much kicking tires as they are dedicated to trying to get into the Canadian market, and they want to meet the distributors and brokers and retailers. So they're a bit more aggressive and closer to an actual export decision than other companies. So it's sort of like pre-clearing companies for us, which makes it easier, and the discussions tend to be more fulsome. They're getting into more specific questions, and it makes it easier for us to help them, and it makes it easier for them to understand the value we bring because they see the barriers and the challenges of Canadian labeling requirements. So they're very relieved to find someone who can give them turnkey solutions.
It also helps that, we pre-screen them when we're working with them to let them know some of the things that they need to be aware of and checking those ingredients to make sure. So if they have a product ingredient in there that's not going to be compliant, what do we do about that? Who can we have them contact to discuss that further? So there's a lot of different things we do to help in that way, with labeling certainly being a major component.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't know about the kind of pre-clearing of that and giving them a heads up almost to kick off the process. It's better than, trying to come in blind and not realizing all the potential issues that they could face.
Yeah, Kathy acts as a nice shock absorber between us. Usually it's us who are, scaring the bejeebies out of the client and getting that deer in headlights look where by the time they come to us through Kathy, they've already had that moment and are ready to proceed.
Yeah, well, the U.S. suppliers are not always aware of really what's involved in getting their packaging compliant. They've heard that there's French. They don't realize that it's French Canadian quite often, which is different, of course, and that you can't put things such as heart healthy on a packaging. So it's always trying to educate them about what kind of comments you cannot put on a packaging. And they're always quite shocked at how much has to go on the package and how can you possibly do it. So we're trying to work with them to get that understanding how it is possible to do all these sorts of things before they're even talking to a company like yourself. So it really does help.
Great. Yeah, I think the comment about just the amount of content on packaging is a comment we hear often. How can you possibly fit the dual language and still maintain, the brand integrity, the look of the packaging? And of course, us as Canadians, we are used to it. We do see it all the time. We almost, disregard the other language that is not our first language. But to other companies that aren't used to that, it would be quite shocking.
Mm-hmm. I always tell them if they can get it on if we can have a can of tuna with both languages on it, it can be done. So
true.
Yeah.
And what type of government support or funding options are out there for some of these companies?
So there are 4 regional trade groups that are funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, of which I represent 2 of them, Food Export Northeast and Midwest. Although there's these 4 regions, they all have a similar funding program, but they just administer it with wherever your head office, a U.S. head office is, that's the region that they would go to. And so the funding programs are called different names depending on the region. So Food Export Northeast and Midwest is called the branded program. In the Southern U.S. region, that's called SUSTA, and that has the 50% cost share program. And in the Western U.S., WSATA, it's called Fund Match. But it is the same program and just the region that administers it. Anyway, those programs are there really to help with marketing initiatives to get into foreign markets. And so one of the big ones is being able to use it for packaging and labeling compliance. These programs are always a reimbursement, a 50% reimbursement, and there's usually a small administrative fee that goes along with it as well. But for the packaging compliance, it would cover 50% of the plates, 1-year run of film per SKU, nutritional, graphic design, and translation. So that's quite a fantastic program to be able to help with that. It also can be for exhibiting at trade shows, international trade shows. So half the cost of their booth, any rental equipment that needs to go into the booth. It covers half of their cost to come up and travel for a couple of people. Handouts, there's help with, the giveaways like pens or whatever. And the funding program can help with running demos at the grocery store, advertising in newspapers, even flyers, um, uh, setting up a page on your website that's for the Canadian side. So social media. So there's a lot of different ways these funds can be used.
For sure. That's a lot more extensive than I thought.
I'm often surprised, though, how many American companies aren't aware that, and they qualify. So I think that's one area where SNI is a little different than some of our competitors, is we not only look after the regulatory and government requirements, but we also assist with business decisions. And one of the first discussions I have with American clients is, does your ingredient characteristics meet the minimum requirement for a USDA branded program grant, which is 50% dry weight volume result of U.S. agricultural output. And I'm often sending them a link to one of the branded programs and say, again, depending on the region you're in, it might vary a bit, but this is the basic program. And the one question I keep getting asked is, well, it's Canada. Do Canadians get offended by seeing product of or made in the USA on the label? And I said, keep in mind that most Canadians live within an hour of the border, and most of us travel across that border to go shopping. So seeing made in the USA or product of the USA is very common for us. And it's not in any way a turnoff. It's seamless. That border's there as an imaginary line. And really, the fact that you're an American supplier doesn't in any way impact on a decision to purchase.
No, we'd love to be buying Canadian. We all want to have Canadian products, but we haven't all have all the businesses that will supply all those types of products. So we have to look at importing. And so we really trust the quality and safety of the US. So that is our biggest trading partner. But I would like to also state that for these funding programs, there are parameters of who can qualify and who can. And so it is designed for, the small to mid-sized companies. It has to be a company that falls under the small business associations. They have parameters on what the maximum number of employees are to be considered a small business. And so they have to be under that certain number. It might be anywhere from 500 or 700, depending on the category. Like snack food would be under 1,250, I believe it is. Whereas pet food might be a little bit less, or baked goods might be 700, something like that. I'm not saying the exact numbers, but just giving you an idea. And the other qualification, it has to be 50%, at least 50% U.S. agricultural ingredient by weight. So if you were having pasta sauce and you're using tomatoes from Italy, obviously that's going to be a lot more non-U.S. product. That wouldn't qualify, but if they were using tomatoes from California or Florida, then it likely would qualify. And all three of all of the regional groups have information about this program on their websites, and there's a pre-qualification that can be filled out to determine whether your company can fit that program.
And I'll generally suggest to companies to take a look at it and apply, because I said it's a minimal application fee. And again, if you qualify, use it. Why not? Mm-hmm. But it's I think it's $50 or $100 to register, or that's what it used to be. Why wouldn't you register and then go through it and see? Because it can save you significant amounts of money, especially in your introduction to the Canadian market, where you've got all these upfront costs to get prepared for the Canadian market. If you can save 50%, it's there for you to use.
Exactly. And the one question everyone asks is, will it cover the fees for slotting? And no, it won't. That's considered a cost of doing business. But when you consider everything else, and especially the labeling aspect, but the program can be used for your label only once. So you want to make sure that you don't use it for stickering, that you do, because if you just sticker your package using that funds, well, then you can't actually do the proper whole package. But it can be used once per SKU unless there's a regulation change. And, we have a new regulation change coming up in, January of 2026 for front of packaging callouts. And so any of the companies that are up here now, U.S. suppliers, might want to take a look and see if they can apply for that funding to help them to get their package compliant when that change comes, because they would be qualified to do it a second time in that case.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's good to know. I wasn't aware that once you're in, that you could reapply to update your packaging based on regulatory changes. I assume that was just, like you said, a cost of doing business, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
So apart from, a quite extensive list of everything you've already mentioned, what else does your company, Boyce Strategic Consulting, specialize in?
Market viability studies is a big one, figuring out that whether the market is good for your company. So although we do most of our work with the regional groups, we can do that individually, store audits, figuring out regulatory to a certain extent, assisting at trade shows, organizing marketing events, helping with demonstrations, any kind of marketing initiatives really that's going to help to broaden your base in the country. We stick with Canadian market.
Right. No, that's great. It's an extensive list of market entry support, which I'm sure is, more than valuable to the clients that you work with. And as we all know, there's been a bunch of changes over the last few years, just given, the economy, the industry in general. What are some of the challenges or issues that you've been seeing that your clients have been having when trying to come up to the Canadian market?
Well, I think with we having COVID, we certainly had the supply chain issues. Some of that solved, seems to be getting better, but I still hear that coming up from time to time. With the exchange rate, that makes it challenging how to figure out your exchange rate. And, if you were up here when it was a more equal dollar and then it drops, how do you combat that? And a lot of the products, the price point they're selling in the US, they have to make sure that they can be competitive when they come up with that exchange rate. Of course, just getting compliance, always understanding what they need to do.
Yeah, I'd say, the challenge for smaller companies of understanding that they almost have to have, it increases their supply management challenges because they have to have Canadian product versus US product. And in the past, in a couple of cases, we've seen American product shipped into Canada due to some error, on the warehousing side. And that caused nothing but grief. And if it's a natural health product or cosmetic, potentially that shipment could be lost and it has to be destroyed. So again, you're creating a dual management system, one for Canadian and one for US. And for some smaller companies, that can be challenging, especially, the GS1, the barcoding, that the barcode should be different. And it just adds to the complexity of already a complex entry challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But if the companies can set up good partnerships with, a company like yourself for the labeling aspects, getting a good broker in place, distributor, and so on. A lot of the companies don't realize how concentrated our market is, and often they just want to come directly into the retailer with sidestepping, a food broker. And in a lot of cases, those are really important to have because you need somebody on the ground up here to help you and manage all these different issues that can come up and have the relationships, because it's definitely a relationship marketing when you have such a concentration of retailers up here. So I think that is another constraint, is trying to have the US suppliers really understand the nuances and not thinking that Canada is just the same as the US. It is very different, and getting your players in place that can help you with that. And although we're only a tenth of the size of the US, I guess they say smaller than the population of California, but we're very concentrated. You mentioned earlier how we're so close to the US border. So, companies coming up into Ontario can easily reach 60-odd% of the market in a very small area between Ontario and Quebec.
And that's what I often tell American companies. Quit thinking of Canada as a market. It's the Toronto-Montreal corridor primarily, with Toronto being the third largest retail target market in North America after New York and LA. It's now bigger than Chicago. And then Vancouver and, Calgary, Edmonton as a secondary market. But if you can get into the Toronto-Montreal corridor, that's a very affluent, cosmopolitan shopping area. And those people are open to products from everywhere because a lot of them have come from all over the globe. So they're not looking for a regional product. They're open to anything that appeals to them. So it's a very welcoming market, especially if you have a good partner, as you said, in that area. And it's huge. And it's the affluence in Toronto. The cost of living in Toronto is so high. So again, there's more of a flexibility on pricing when you're going into Toronto because they're used to it being expensive.
Well, like you said, Kathy, it's super important to have these types of relationships with, knowledgeable people, knowledgeable companies, people who can really help. We at SNI really value that we have great partners in industry, such as yourselves, to make sure that our clients, as well as your clients, they just get the support that they need. We encourage you to reach out with any questions. Our team would be happy to help. Again, make those connections, get you the answers that you need to support your market entry journey. Thank you so much, Kathy, for joining. Thanks to everybody for watching. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the SNI Podcast. To learn more about SNI and receive even more resources to help you reach your business goals, including information on regulatory compliance, clinical trials, and creative solutions for the natural health and food industries, follow us at Source-Nutraceutical Inc. on LinkedIn. You can also visit our website at sourcenutra.com. Thanks again and see you next time.